everyone, and welcome back to Real Future Reviews. Today, we are taking a look at a movie that's been out for 2 weeks now, 2.5 weeks, I think, or a week and a half.
It feels longer.
Yeah, it is If, directed by John Krasinski. This movie takes a look at imaginary friends. What if they were real? What if they needed to be paired up with a new kid, or paired up with their old kid? Who knows? Because the movie certainly doesn't seem to know. And you also have Kaylee Fleming playing Bee, whose mother dies of cancer when she's very young, and her father is going in for heart surgery. And so she ends up going off on this adventure with a guy named Cal, played by Ryan Reynolds, in order to help all these imaginary friends. And that's the movie right there. And honestly, it might look sad on me for saying this, but this might be the best movie I've seen this year. Maybe not the greatest movie that's come out this year, for sure, but like for me, it's probably the best movie I have seen this year. Of course, I don't really have a compendium of all the movies I've seen so far, but I feel like this is probably the top, which, like I said, still not great. It is a bit of a mess. But I'm gonna give it over to Karif, who is here. I didn't even introduce Karif_wins. You guys know Karif. I mean, obviously you're gonna see the title of this video and know he's here. So Go ahead, tell me what you thought about If.
All right, first, very important note that I just learned, because I'm on Wikipedia. I saw this movie about a week and a half ago, so I was trying to refresh my memory. I click on Kaylee Fleming's name, right? I learned that this girl is young Rey in Star Wars The Force Awakens. You know that scene where she's like, her parents like jet away from the fucking starship or whatever?
They were like, got a jet. Bye.
Yeah. Apparently that is, we're looking at young Rey.
She's also young Sylvie in Loki.
And so there we go.
Yeah.
A new actress, if you will. So I guess what I want to say about this movie is I think Rob and I are basically on the same page in that this movie is a mess. I just think it's a lot more of a mess than Rob does. It is not the best movie I've seen this year, but I don't know what I would say. And if I say Furiosa, I feel like that's cheating a little bit. I'm not sure.
I feel once it focuses on what it's actually about, it's really good. And if the whole movie could have been about what it actually is about, I think it would have been a lot better. I mean, you could say, okay, so spoilers for If. The movie's been out for a week and a half. Spoilers. It's all in her imagination. None of it was real the whole time. Even Ryan Reynolds' character was not real. It was her imaginary friend. And so basically all this adventure stuff she's going on is basically her like escaping from the reality of her father being in the hospital and being scared.
Her mother's already died, importantly, as well. So it's kind of like a redux. Her mother's already died as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So yeah, she's like, might be, for lack of a better term, double dipping on this, and it's rough for her, right? Like that's the setup to the movie. She meets a cast of colorful characters.
Voiced by basically everybody in Hollywood right now.
Everybody in Hollywood. It's every single comedian in Hollywood, apparently.
Pretty much.
John Krasinski knows people. Who would have guessed? And so I guess, or we could start at John Krasinski. And his,
who was not in this movie as much as I thought he was going to be. Like, they set it up like he's at the beginning, and then he's just like not really in it. I know he voices the marshmallow, but he doesn't do anything but sit in a hospital room. I know he's directing the movie, so it probably was just easier to do it this way. Still,
he so desperately wants to play the fun dad. It's kind of, it's a little embarrassing.
But that's kind of the point, though, is like, sometimes, being a little cringe is fun.
Finally, Manic Pixie Dream Father.
Yep.
We did it, Chad.
Exactly. I think I want to start off with the good stuff. I think the character designs were really nice. I think it was a fun premise, and a lot of the visual effects were fun. I was getting a lot of Who Framed Roger Rabbit vibes, not from like the tone of the movie or the story, but just like all these different colorful cartoon characters interacting with each other in the world. And I was thinking, this is kind of like the closest we're going to get to something like that, or like this is the closest we've gotten to something like that in a while. I don't really want to count the Rescue Rangers movie because I think that's way off the mark, but that's for a whole different video. I think that, like I said, the point of the movie, or like its whole thesis, is about, you know, it's okay to grow up, but you should still hold on to, you know, part of that childhood that you have when things get stressful. It's like about nostalgia and childhood memories. I think there are some hints, now that I'm thinking about it, throughout the movie, that all of this is just completely in the girl's head. Like when they're at the fair, it focuses on the stuffed teddy bear that's like hanging down from one of the game stalls. And so I think that's kind of a nod to the fact that this is all made up, because she talks about how she always used to go to that pier with the carnival. It obviously she's gonna remember stuff from there, and so that's kind of a clue into that. What else did I don't know. To say that I have more negative things, but not really. I think it's mostly based in the fact that it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Like, does it want to be about a girl and some jaded guy that is maybe a little disillusioned with his job, having to relocate these imaginary friends? That could be a fun premise, right, for a story. But then halfway through, they're like, well, actually, it's about getting the imaginary friends back with the people that you know made them. But they kind of do it that way, but they're like, the whole thing is like the older people have to see them, but then they never see them. But that's because the actual point they want to make is, it's not necessarily about seeing your imaginary friends, it's about how it makes you feel. But they don't 100% make that clear. You kind of just pick up on it, and yeah, it, like I said, it's a little all over the place.
I feel like with John Krasinski is that it's kind of clear that he wants to make this movie, or like the director John Krasinski is actually putting like a fair amount of muscle behind some of these scenes to like make them look good.
No,
and to kind of give them interesting.
This was not a lazy movie, for sure.
Yeah,
a lot of production value.
I don't think he 100% grasps like what makes these movies good. It's a little too depressing the whole way through, and when there is magic in the story, it doesn't feel like they can come up with enough interesting things to do with that magic.
They really only have the one scene like in the retirement home where it's like all crazy, and I was like, oh, this is fun.
And it does, yeah, that feels pretty good, but it doesn't feel like they really know what to do with like the ifs in terms of like physical comedy or just like physical space in general.
Because you can't break the like the show, like the movie kind of breaks its own rules, right? Like none of them are real, but then there's a shot that shows that they might be real, because there's a receptionist lady that sees B getting hugged by Blue. Like, she doesn't see Blue. Blue's the big purple guy. Yeah, so it's like, I was like, oh wow, so these things are real. But then later it's like, oh, they're not real at all. They were all in her head, which, I mean, you could use that as an argument as to why this story kind of changes part way through. Like, that's kind of, that's giving too much of a benefit of a doubt. But because it's all in her imagination, you could be like, oh, well, her imagination keeps changing, so, you know, the one thing wasn't working, so she just decided to make it about something else.
I think people, and I'll kind of spin this off into its own little tangent, but I think people give Up's last half a little bit too much shit, but it's so important, right, to have that sort of like levity that the middle part of Up brings between those kind of big emotional swings, because it does kind of remind you of like the playfulness and the fun that if Carl would just open his goddamn eyes, he would see, right? Like, that he would get to experience. And that's kind of the same thing with this movie, is that like you really need to dial in that sense of like interaction and like fun with these characters, and I feel like it falls flat a little bit.
It doesn't go far enough, basically.
Yeah.
Well, I would argue the reason that Cal is the way that he is, because we're talking about the Ryan Reynolds character, right?
Yeah.
Yes. I feel like that he's kind of that pessimistic part of her mind that's like, oh, I'm not a kid anymore, I'm grown up, or because she's become jaded with the world, and so because he's like the original If, right? Like he's like her personal If. And
Mhm.
so it makes a little bit of sense that he's like that jaded part of her that's trying to grow up. But by the end, when she comes around to it, then he kind of comes around to this whole thing.
I another small tangent here, but people have been like kind of bitching about Ryan Reynolds' performances being the same as Deadpool in every movie that he's in, and that is not this movie. Like there are a lot of movies that he's been in where that is the
No,
case,
he's not
but
really
this
that
one
this
is
year.
he is a jaded asshole through like a majority of the
He's
film,
not that
which is
much of
another
an
problem.
asshole. He's just kind of he's a little jaded. He's
Yeah,
not
but the thing is
nearly.
that he never does anything funny, I feel like, right?
Yeah, but
During the
he
movie.
like
Yeah.
I said, it's because he is I guess
Or like
are
he's
you
not
looking
even
at
like
him to
the
be more of a Willy Wonka type character?
maybe, but I think what I really want is more scenes like the epic Buster Keaton reference in the middle of the movie where he like almost gets smashed by the door, right? If he's gonna
Yeah.
be a jaded asshole, I want the world to poke more fun at him during the film,
Yeah, and they
right?
only do it during that one scene and then it kind of moves on.
Yeah.
It was like this is the big scene that we're gonna put in the trailers, and like this is the one that kids are gonna remember. And by the way, and I told this to Karif off recording, but this is definitely gonna be some kid, some 7, 8 year old kid is gonna watch this movie, and this is gonna be their favorite movie. And then like 10 years from now, they're gonna make a YouTube video saying If the underrated masterpiece, and
Yeah,
it's
if
gonna
it's
be a
actually a hidden gem.
20 minute
Yeah.
video essay about how this movie was actually brilliant, and it's about childhood nostalgia and so on and so forth. Everything we're saying now, basically. But
Yeah,
they're
the thing
probably
is
going to
that
forgive a lot of the shortcomings. One of the shortcomings being the kid actor. Kaylee Fleming does a good enough job. There's some line deliveries that don't necessarily land. Like they're supposed to be comedic, but they like I get what they're going for with their character, but she doesn't necessarily land the line delivery.
Mhm.
And
I
they
think what the movie and like me specifically, what I can appreciate about this film is that it does treat children with respect in the sense that it wants to be a more serious movie and
there are no fart jokes.
yeah,
I don't think there was a single fart joke in this movie. I don't think there was
there's not
like
a fart
potty
joke, right?
jokes, there was no butt jokes, there was no there was no he got hit in the pee pee jokes. uh it yeah, I agree. It does
It
respect
also
kids.
understands a very important aspects of children in that they all want to have jobs. They don't exactly know what that entails, but like
They
they
want to feel
all want to
important.
be working and feel important, right? And I think that is a very important part of this film that I think may, 10 years down the road in the hidden gem essay it might
Yeah.
show up. Like I don't know. My hidden gem that wasn't actually a hidden gem, it's more of a guilty pleasure, was Bedtime Stories with Adam Sandler,
Uh-huh.
which is like in sort of the realm of what this movie is. But in that movie it's a lot more about like Adam Sandler learning to find the joy, right? It's about somebody, or it's about the person who has grown up, um, feeling,
The joy of
like
life
maybe
has
life,
left them,
yeah,
right? Like they feel like their
yeah, a
best
little
years are
bit,
behind them and they're nothing's interesting anymore. They're like
yeah, but
depressed.
he's really good at kind of being a man child, and yet doesn't really like understand it. It's still a fucking mess, right? Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong. That movie kind of it does not hold up to any
No,
real
it's a
analytical
late
lens, but
2000s Adam Sandler movie. That's about the time he was starting to give up.
yeah, but like it does kind of mirror some of the elements of this film, except a little less, and if it's less cringy. Like that is an important part of it. There are still like a little,
Blue is a
sprinkles of
little
embarrassing
obnoxious.
moments. Yeah,
They could have dialed him back, but I get it. He's the big, he's the teddy bear they're gonna sell. They want kids to like him, so they're gonna make him like really big and loud. He
yeah.
falls over all the time.
I'm big and I'm big. Yeah, he is a little bit big, the caddy,
Yeah,
like the
he's
way
not
that
as dumb, but
yeah,
and there is a nice emotional moment with them that does land. I would say
Mhm.
the emotional moments with and this is something that kind of hits home for older people. The moments where the adults in the movie get that hit of nostalgia when they're kind of at a low point, and you're like, oh, I know what that's like, or oh, I want to be able to reach in whenever I'm stressed and find that zen.
And so like all of these high-minded ideas are great. It's like, that's what makes the movies like this interesting. But then the rest of the movie just feels a little bit bland, or like it's just missing something. And I do
Just a
think it
little
is
bit of
that sense of
spice.
wonder. Right, yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of thrilled that a movie like this got made, honestly, because I mean, yeah, you could do the Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends joke, yeah, whatever, okay, haha, hee hee ha. But I think that it is a wonderfully original idea, and it, even though it might not go all the way with it and it's a little bit messy, it is still like its own original thing. Um, and obviously with the old bear character, I'm like, oh, this is like a Winnie the Pooh kind of thing.
The Paddington.
Yeah, the
Paddington 2, that's another
Paddington,
thing.
Winnie the Pooh.
John Krasinski watched Paddington 2. It's clear. Everybody watched Paddington 2, or it wouldn't have showed up in that Nicolas Cage movie as a major, like, joke.
I have not seen it yet. I saw Paddington 1 in theaters, but not Paddington 2.
But yeah, it's like it is pretty far below that. But yeah, there's reasons why that movie works and this one doesn't.
I think, I don't know if this is a movie that would get better or worse on repeat viewings. I don't know if I would just find more things to dislike about it, or if I would start seeing some of the stuff come through.
I still think it's like kind of like tough to get through. I think
there is a section where it kind of drags.
That's the thing, is that the opening montage drags a little bit. I feel like
it's a little bit too long. Yeah, I feel like the
kid that's in
interviewing
the hospital kind of drags.
That goes nowhere though. Like, you think so? There's this kid named Benjamin who, bless that kid's soul, he cannot act. He was just, I don't know if it's John Krasinski, because I mean, like you said, everyone's just kind of a little bit off in this movie. But that, I get what they were trying to go for with that kid, but he never really pays off at all. Like, you think like, oh, he's gonna be part of the climax.
Minari. That's so fucking crazy. I literally flipped his name. I haven't seen Minari, so I couldn't tell you. But like
the scene
that's wild.
Where they're doing the interview, I feel like, yeah, that's about the time where I'm like, okay, this is kind of starting to drag on a little bit. If they could have varied it up, if they could have like met different kids, because I thought that's where it was going. I thought they were like gonna go through the kid ward at the hospital and interview a bunch of these kids with all these different imaginary friends. But they tried one kid, it didn't work, and then they gave up. They didn't even try to. What about all the other children in the world? You're in, what are they, in New York City, right?
And that's the problem with the movie, though, right? Is that it's just like, it's always on to the next idea, but every idea doesn't feel fleshed out enough. Like, even the good emotional payoff, if they were gonna go for that, I feel like they could have built an entire movie just towards that concept of like, what are these like adults doing now, or whatever, how are they struggling, and what do they need, or whatever, right? And then we get this character, and we have a little bit of the intro where they're like, oh, we're doing a startup of a home for, of adopting imaginary friends, right? And then we just immediately delve into the, okay, we're gonna set these people up with their original like friends, and then we can flesh that out more, give the adult characters maybe a little bit more like,
but no, they don't do that, because that's not how the movie starts.
Because it's like
they can't decide what they wanted to do. Like, it's like they had two really good ideas and they were like, let's do both of them.
Well, that's another thing, is I feel like it can be an issue, right? Of like, when you're trying to make a fantasy movie, of having a bunch of ideas to like fill out a world, right? Or to,
I mean,
anyways,
you could also make the argument that them not being able to set the other kid up with these imaginary friends goes back to the thing of the imaginary friends represent someone's personal childhood memories, and so you can't just give that to somebody else. So it kind of still ties in, but not the way that it's executed. It's not very clear. Like this is, like I said, maybe one of those things where you have to watch it multiple times and you're kind of like, oh, okay, I kind of get it. Um,
Yeah, but the will to come back to this is kind of small for me. Is
yeah,
the
no,
other
I
thing.
can understand that, and I don't know if this is something I'll ever end up watching again. But it's not bad. I think kids will definitely enjoy it. They'll like the colorful characters. I think the parents might get a little something out of it. Just, that the
That's the
stress
thing.
of
It's like
day-to-day stuff.
there are very long stretches of this movie that are boring, right? I feel like, and I can't tell if like children are gonna like that, especially in a, you know, not to not to be the
Are
guy
are
that
you
draws
gonna be the
generational
old man
lines.
waving
Yeah,
your stick
yeah,
saying
but
these kids these days and their TikToks?
yeah, their TikToks. I mean, it is kind of provable. I've read a bunch of stuff about, or I've heard a bunch of jokes about how teachers are dealing with this, and it
Yeah.
doesn't look very good.
I no,
So
I think that this is a discussion for another thing, but I think the
yeah,
pandemic
sure,
and,
sure, sure.
and like, Coco Melon have severely stunted a lot of very
And I
important
mean,
developmental years for children.
once again, if is totally fighting a fight against that, right? So I
But
guess I can be happy that, a movie like this can still exist.
I think the argument could also be made that just objectively there are a lot of like scenes that could have maybe been not shortened but made a little bit more interesting, maybe through the dialogue or something, or like cinematography that just don't really work as well as they could. It just goes back to what you said. The two biggest issues with this movie are that it's kind of a mess. They can't decide what they want to do, and there's a spark that isn't quite there. That just like a little bit of something that it needs, and you can't really put your finger on it, but you're watching it and you're like,
I think
yeah,
it's just because it's not having as much fun as I think it needs to, right? Like it's so it is
it's playing
focused
it a
on
little bit
telling
too
a more,
straight.
yeah. Honestly, if this were like a movie musical, I could kind of feel it, right?
I think it also didn't want to clash with what I think they felt was like a pretty, not like a serious, but kind of a mature lesson at the end of the movie. And if it was a little bit too over the top, then it might not land as well. Or it could just be, John Krasinski hasn't really directed a kids movie before, so he's still kind of getting his feet wet.
I kind of would be interested in seeing him do this again. I mean, it's in his wheelhouse. He made some good news for God's sakes. He wants to like be cheery and all that. I do think another run at this would maybe yield better results than like some other people would think, but I think that this is more of a curiosity than it is like a
Yeah.
thing that I people should watch.
It's definitely not a lazily made movie. It's not like I didn't watch this trailer and feel like, oh, I'm getting Harold in the Purple Crown vibes from this.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
We'll wait. We'll
You,
wait.
you know I had to
We're
bring it up.
actually
You
gonna review.
knew I had
We're
to
actually
bring it
gonna
up.
review that.
Uh,
Oh my god! I'm trying to think of other movies that are sort of like this, and I don't think there's ever been one. I mean, Lyle Lyle Crocodile is a little bit below the belt in terms of like,
well,
or
because
below the
those are like
line in
things that
terms
are
of like,
based off of things, right? Like this is kind of, as far as I'm aware, kind of based off of its own original idea. Things like or not Garfield, but Clifford, which came out a few years ago, Lyle Lyle Crocodile, those are based off of books, right?
Mhm.
There's a pre-established thing. But this is like its own thing, so it's kind of hard to like point at any one thing. Like I said, I kind of equate it, just the feelings that I got just from the style is like Who Framed Roger Rabbit with all these cartoon characters coexisting with each other. I know that Jeremy Johns kind of hinted at the very end of this movie, the end segment where all the imaginary friends get paired up with their adults, is like it kind of breaks the world, but I don't see it that way. Because like we said, none of it was real the whole time. It was just in the girl's head, right? All the imaginary friends, everything that happened. Which would probably also explain why that kid never saw any of the imaginary friends, is because it wasn't real to begin with. Uh,
Yeah, I think it does kind of mess with the emotional stakes to say it was all in her head.
yeah.
Like, but
But you don't know
Because
that
like
till
if
the
she's
end.
playing pretend, well, she's like very adamantly saying, "I don't want to play pretend anymore" to her dad. Is like maybe that's like a oh, but moment at the end. But it does feel like it takes the wind out of the sails a little bit if she was just all making this up,
Yeah. But
right?
my point is that it doesn't really break canon that you see Cal bringing all these imaginary friends to their adults, because I just imagined all of that was happening in the girl's imagination too. Like she was just imagining that ended up happening. So it still works.
You think the fact that his name is Calvin is a reference to Calvin and Hobbes, other famous?
You know what? They literally do a close up of Calvin and Hobbes early on in the movie too.
Oh, really?
And
Well, there we
wait,
go.
you don't
then.
remember that in the closet when she goes to get like her crafts and stuff from that box?
Oh
It
my
is
god,
literally
it
right
totally
there.
is. Holy shit, that's what that is.
Yeah, that's more
Oh,
foreshadowing
John
that it's all
Krasinski is
in her
a
head.
genius. He's a master filmmaker.
Maybe
got it
he's
down.
gearing up to make a Calvin and Hobbes movie. Who knows?
I think that the temptation against that is a little bit overblown. I think that movie would probably be fine. But yeah.
So this was just seen regularly. There was no 3D, no IMAX, no 4DX, no ScreenX, no RPX, no D-Box, no 4D. It was all just regular. I will say that I think this movie would have been really cool in 3D. I think this movie more than any of them would have been really nice to see in 3D, just with all the character designs. Some of the cinematography is pretty good. Like I know I just said that it should have been more interesting, but some of it was pretty good. And I think they could have done some fun stuff with, especially if it's gonna be for kids. Kids love 3D movies. Let's just be real. They love 3D movies. And I feel like if you want to make a movie that's supposed to be talking about the joy and excitement of childhood, that would be a good fit for it. It would make thematic sense. I know that it's kind of a risk because 3D movies don't do as well as they used to, but I feel like if this came out in like 2011, 2012, it absolutely would have been.
Yeah, this movie feels like it could have been made at any point in the 2000s and it would have fit right in. As well as the 2010s, honestly. It strangely, messes like this kind of feel
Nostalgic.
like they've always existed. Yeah, nostalgic in a way,
That's
right?
why you can't really put your finger on it, because it just kind of feels like a blend of those kinds of 2000s movies.
Yeah, and I think that, that's kind of fun. Strange World is that bad. It can be that, but not as bad. So
yeah, just okay. It's just it's not bad, and sometimes that's okay.
Yep.
That's all I really have to say about John Krasinski and his If
John
movie.
Jablinski.
Yeah,
I've been
John
saying that
Jablinski.
name 7 times. Oh, I forgot one more thing. The score sucks. I hate it.
You hated
I
it.
fucking hate the score for this movie. I think that it's like they got Michael Giacchino, which is a good idea. He did Inside Out, and that score slaps, and is probably what they needed more of. But it's just so over the top and schmaltzy.
It's
and
too
they didn't even
cartoony.
create more
Does
than
that
like
make sense?
yeah, they didn't create more than like 3 character themes, and so you're hearing like that same schmaltzy song
The
over
whole
like
movie.
a bunch of different like scenes, and it's just like, oh my god, it's too much. Like I know that sometimes you have to lead children into the emotional moment, right, and like kind of signal that something is happening with the music, but it's just like they took Skittles and slathered them in molasses, right?
Yeah, it's very sweet. I mean,
Yeah, and you could hear it too. If I'm noticing this, that means you could notice it too. Like,
yeah, I kind of, it didn't really bother me all that much. I was like, yeah, okay, but I mean, I can get where you're coming from. I guess one more thing is there. I wish we could have gotten to know the imaginary friends a little bit more. There are a lot of them, but like Blossom and Blue, who are clearly the main two in this. Would have been
I like the
nice
art
too.
teacher design. That
Oh
guy's pretty
yeah,
cool.
that's fun. I like the shifty guy, the guy that's like jump with the trench coat and he's jumping all over the
Oh,
place.
there was that video by what's that guy's name? Chazington or whatever that compared it to the mysterious Mr. Enter.
Honestly, I think the visual effects in this are really interesting. The fact that they were able to allow these characters to blend into the real world, but still have them be cartoony and still have it be believable, was really good.
The actors are acting off of them fine, in my opinion. Like, they're not doing amazingly, but I think that, like,
I just felt like the compositing and everything.
When you see two characters in a room and one of them is CG and one isn't, it's like fine. It's not.
You still have to keep that cartoonish look. Like they tread the line. They tread it. I think they treaded it as well as you could possibly thread that needle.
Yeah.
Sometimes the character sightlines don't feel like they match up, but I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Kids aren't going to notice that, and it's about how you feel, Care. It's about how it makes you feel. It's about
how you feel, how it makes you feel, and
I don't regret seeing it. I'm glad that I did, and I'm glad that I could sit here and talk to you about it. I wish I could go see better movies like Furiosa so we could say overwhelmingly positive things, but you know, maybe when Harold and the Purple Crown comes out, we'll both be very surprised. Who knows?
I doubt it.
Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I'm done too.
Yeah, go check out if you've got young kids, or wait for it to go on DVD and buy it for them there. Who knows?
Honestly, this is like a perfect DVD movie.
Yeah. Anyway, peace out.
Cheers.